Continental Empires, 1660 to 1720. In 1757, a British thinker by the name of Edmund Burke observes how the British are growing their colonies in America. He sees their planning as being very chaotic. So unlike the Spanish and the French empires, which had carefully managed their colonial territories, Britain's approach was far more hands-off. So Burke notes that the development of the British colonies is shaped by simply chance, climate, and really the individual's ambition. So rather than having a clear imperial strategy, each colony just evolves on its own, depending on how much wealth is contributed to the empire, depending on how much centralized planning is meant that the colonies are going to grow in different directions. So with this little coordination or oversight from the British government. So most British colonies were private ventures. They're chartered by the Crown, but not directly supervised or supported by the Crown. This type of independence gave the colonists freedom to make decisions, but it also led to serious problems. So by the late 1600s, many colonies are faced with instability, internal conflicts, economic struggles, and violent clashes with the Native American groups local to their area. So local governments often lack the power to control their population or defend their borders, leading to this power struggle and some very fragile alliances. So without a unified plan or strong imperial support, the British colonies became a patchwork of competing interests, setting the stage for this future tension and eventually this push towards independence. So in the 17th century in England, they are experiencing major political and religious turmoil. This is going to deeply affect its government in England and also its government in the colonies. So a long-standing struggle between the British Parliament and the King center on this royal power and religious control. So the Archduke made changes to the Church of England that angered many people, especially the Puritans in Scotland. So this is going to spark a conflict. In 1628, the Parliament passes the Petition of Rights. This is a key document that reinforces the basic freedoms, and it limits the king's ability to impose taxes or imprison citizens without a cause. These tensions are going to escalate into what is known as the English Civil War in 1642. This ends with Parliament's victory and the execution of King Charles I in 1649. So after this period of rule under Oliver Cromwell, England transitions into a constitutional monarchy, where the power was shared between the Crown, the King, and the Parliament. So during this time of upheaval, the British government paid little attention, if any, to its American colonies. Most colonies were private ventures chartered by the Crown, but like I said, had no direct supervision or support from the Crown. So this hands-off approach. So these colonies are developed independently, and of course they're going to be a little bit unstable. Local colonial governments are going to really struggle to enforce the laws and to protect their borders, especially from the Indians. So without the support, we're going to start seeing a lot of chaos, a lot of economic challenges, a lot of clashes with different Native American groups, and we're going to see these issues and tensions that are going to further play a part in the idea of separating from England. So at the same time, Britain's economic policies are based on mercantilism. Mercantilism is this theory that trade is the key to the nation's wealth and power. And you have the mother country and you have the colony. Well, the mother country controls and owns all of those natural resources in the colony. So if you're a colonist and you have a forest behind you, that's not your forest, that is the mother country's forest. So what the mother country would do, you're the colonist, you have a forest behind you, your job is to chop down the wood, chop down the tree, create the wood, the lumber, and you would send it to England. You need a table. You can't just go in your backyard and chop down your trees and create a table. You have to chop down the trees, create the lumber, send it to England. England will then make your table, and England will then sell your table back to you. So the idea here is England controls the resources, controls the industrialization, and then also controls the market, you, the colonist, who needs the table. This is going to lead to issues. So to protect the British, England's interest, the British are going to pass laws that control colonial trade and ensure that all the profits are going to flow back to the mother country. One of these important sets of laws are the Navigation Acts. This requires that all goods shipped to England or its colonies be carried on an English-owned and English-manned ship. This law also stated that foreign goods headed to the colonies had to pass through England first. This way England is able to tax them. This system encouraged the colonies to send raw materials like tobacco, lumber, cotton to England, where they would then turn it into the product, the industrial part of it, and then sell it back to the colonies. The goal was to keep the wealth within the empire and limit trade. So the empire, the crown, is controlling both the resources, the industrialization, and the shipping of it, and of course the market, the colonist, who's going to buy the product. So the American colonies develop along different paths, largely because the British government was not being strict with their rules. They were really, like we'd said before, hands off. So this allowed each colony to kind of grow based on its leadership and the conditions around the colony, local conditions, environmental. So Pennsylvania and South Carolina, they're going to become two important colonies during this period. They're going to offer settlers contributing to the economy. So they're going to offer different opportunities for colonial settlers to come in as long as they're helping to contribute to the economy. In New Netherlands, which is a Dutch colony, it's going to be taken over by the English and it's going to be renamed New York. And this is going to add an even larger presence for the British in North America. So the colonies that thrive the most were those that offered freedom, opportunity, and free white settlers, especially through access to land and religious tolerance. So these patterns of growth help shape this diverse, independent characteristics that are going to come out within each colony. In England, they're trying to still control North America by taking over New Netherlands from the Dutch, renaming it New York. They have the Navigation Acts passed by the British Parliament. They're going to cut the Dutch out of international trade and challenge their dominance in the slave trade. They're going to pave the way for more English expansion. James, the Duke of York, is going to persuade King Charles II to grant him the land between Connecticut and Delaware, those two rivers. So he sent troops and warships to seize New Amsterdam. He's going to then transform it into New York. The colonial mix of the people are going to be both Dutch and English influence, but they're going to continue with the strict mercantilism policies, and this is going to cause more tension among the merchants who are going to eventually resent the British control over their trade. So then meanwhile in Pennsylvania, William Penn, a Quaker and the son of one of King Charles's closest allies, Charles II, closest allies, he's going to create Penn's colony, and it's going to be Pennsylvania, and he's going to promise religious freedom, self-government, and economic opportunity. So this is going to attract a wide range of European settlers, including Quakers, Germans, and with that is going to come indentured servants. So William Penn envisioned this peaceful relationship with the Native Americans and this very orderly farming villages, and Pennsylvania is going to quickly grow into this very diverse and prosperous colony. Despite its early ideals, the colony eventually passed laws recognizing slavery by the 1700s. This is going to conflict with William Penn's original vision for the colony. So you've seen some examples of how each colony is really starting to develop independently of each other. South Carolina is going to emerge as a powerful and complex colony. It's going to be shaped more by its ideas, by trade and slavery. It's founded as a proprietary colony, so it's under private ownership. Its leaders are going to be Anthony Ashley Cooper. It's going to be influenced by John Locke, his ideas. And it's going to have a fundamental constitution. It's going to have a representative government, religious tolerance, and it's going to reflect a belief in a hierarchy society. So although the plan to create a British-style nobility failed, South Carolina quickly develops into a wealthy colony that's sustained by enslaved African labor. So many early settlers came from Barbados. This is going to be a sugar colony. Into Britain's, this is the British first slave colony. So they have very harsh slave codes, and it's like a very brutal plantation type conditions, and it's just a very brutal colony. But they're going to use Barbados as a success story to kind of mold other colonies. So these type of attitudes of being very harsh, having a slave society, these are going to come to South Carolina. And especially the enslaved Africans are going to be brought over to really work a cash crop is going to be rice. In this situation is going to be the cash crop. So South Carolina is going to rise up on slave labor, and it's going to start having some violent conflicts with the Native Americans, especially the local ones. So they're going to have issues quite a while between 1670 and 1715, 1716. You're going to have at this time close to 50,000 Native Americans who were enslaved. This is going to fuel tension, and this is going to lead to the Yancey War, and that's going to be in 1715. So the war is going to begin after a very unfair English trade and practice, and it's going to result in a massacre of South Carolina citizens. So the tribe is going to ally with other tribes, threatening the colony's survival. So after fighting, the colony is going to ally with the Cherokee, and they're going to defeat the other native tribe, who is then going to fled to Florida under the Spanish control. So the war is going to end in a very fragile peace treaty by 1717, but it's going to have a very lasting impact. So South Carolina, who became this dominant force in the Southeast by controlling trade and expanding slavery, is going to really be seen as building its society on plantation wealth and racial equality. So Virginia is going to undergo some major changes as early as soon as the colonies start hitting some instability. It's going to create this new social order and this new economic order. So what the turning point is for Virginia is Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. This is a violent uprising that's led by Nathaniel Bacon. He's a wealthy young planter. So he is going to be upset, and he's going to rally the freemen and the servants. He's upset over these high taxes, the limitation in land, the government's failure to protect settlers from Native American attacks, because the settlers, like I said before, are going to keep going into Native American land and territory and taking it over. So the rebellion is going to begin after a violent clash with the local Indians, and it's going to escalate into a full-scale revolt. Bacon's forces attack this native community, and it's going to force Governor Berkeley, who kind of was wanting to protect and keep everything peaceful, it's going to cause him to flee. So when Bacon dies, the rebellion collapsed. But what the rebellion showed was this deep tension in colonial society. The different ways that they believed and felt about the way that the elites were responding to enslaved labor and indentured labor. So after the rebellion, Virginia's elites respond by shifting indentured servants to enslaved African labor. So they're going to free their indentured servants, and they're going to go to enslaving Africans for their labor. So this creates a slave-based society. So the economy, the society is completely slave-based. So the British, or Britain, had entered the transatlantic slave trade on a really large scale. So by 1698, private merchants were authorized to transport slaves to North America. In Virginia, the enslaved population grew rapidly. So within 2 decades, it had grown by 20%. And slavery became central to the colonies' economy and also their social structure. And again, they're going to use Barbarossa as a model. So they're going to have harsh slave codes, which are going to be introduced in 1705. They're going to make slavery hereditary and racial, and freeing slaves is going to be very, very rare. So this is going to change the way Virginia transforms its society. It's going to be built on the plantation wealth, racial inequality, and permanent slavery. So the New England colonies were thriving. Their population was escalating. They were growing. They're growing through natural increase. Families were doing well. Their families were large. Life expectancy was high, higher actually than England. And homes evolved from simple shacks to these nice 2-story dwellings. You're going to have your conditions are going to improve your living conditions, your sanitation conditions, food. All of that's going to improve, and all of that's going to affect the lifeline. But this success is also going to bring on challenges. So you have Puritan leaders who are going to grow concerned that the people were becoming too focused on worldly matters. And because they're so focused on what the world has given them and living not in luxury, but not dying because of sanitation issues, the belief is that they're going to start drifting away from their religious devotion. So church membership declines, and in 1660, the halfway covenant was introduced. This is allowing children and grandchildren of original church members to join without a full conversion experience, which, if you remember, this is really important to the Puritans. So this is going to cause tension within these Puritan communities, as many fear that there's a loss of spiritual purity. So at the same time, in New England, their population's growing too, and this is causing major conflicts with the local Native American groups, especially over land, because again, they are going into Indian territory and taking their land. So one of the big clashes that's going to happen is called King Philip's War in 1675, named after Metacom. He is the son of the local Indian tribe. So as the English settlers continue to encroach on this native land, Metacom goes by King Philip. That's what the colonists call him. He's going to organize his troops, his troops, and other localized Indians to resist. So after failing to play rival colonies against each colonies, is what he does first, trying to get them to turn against each other, he's going to prepare for war. So the conflict is going to involve multiple colonies, and it's going to result in heavy casualties on both sides, both the colonists and the Indians. So although the English eventually won the war, it's going to lead to a near destruction of the Native American presence in the southeastern New England. And it's going to mark one of that area's deadliest Indian wars. So as the British Empire expands further into North America, it's had to carefully balance the interest of its colonists with its broader imperial goals. At the same time, the French are moving and expanding westward, building really strong alliances with those Native American tribes to protect their territory and slow the British from advancing. By the early 18th century, the French and their Indian allies control a vast region, including the Great Lakes, the western Mississippi River, and the land stretching all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So in contrast, the British colonies were mostly confined to the eastern seaboard. To compete with the French influence and secure their frontier, the British began forming peace agreements and alliances with the different regional Native American tribes. So these relationships became very crucial for trade, military support, maintaining stability in these areas that were contested. And as both of these empires rely on native partnerships, this is going to create issues further on. So as the British try and regain political stability in the late 17th century, it began as trying to bring more order and control to these loosely governed American colonies. King James II attempted to centralize the power by revoking colonial charters and creating the new domain of England. So placing Massachusetts under the strict rule of a governor. And the governor goes in and he's going to limit town meetings. He wants to change how juries were selected. He's going to impose taxes without the local consent. And he's going to start sparking up resentment. He's going to create unrest. And the colonies who had been on their own, they enjoyed self-rule. They're not going to like this direct attack on their freedoms. So as all this political instability is going on, and as the crown is trying to regain its, political territory and political ability to rule these colonies, you're going to have some other issues. So as King James II, he's attempting to centralize the power by creating this domain of England. You're going to have in France, you're going to have some new ideologies coming over. So first off, let's go back to England and the Glorious Revolution in 1688 and what's going on in England, because that has, whatever's going on in England, the mother country, or France, the mother country, that's going to also affect what's happening over in the colonies. So during this time, 1688, you have the Glorious Revolution. This is when William and Mary replaced James II on the English throne. And these ideas are sparked by John Locke. John Locke's going to be extremely important going further. So John Locke is this French philosopher, okay? And he's big during the Enlightenment, which is what we're kind of in right now. And he creates these two treatises of government. That's what his writings are called. And the colonists are going to begin to, excuse me, learn about him as the ideas come over from France. And they're going to start to listen to these ideas. And his ideas are actually written into the Bill of Rights. Okay, so John Locke, Two Treatises of Government, he believes in this social contract theory. And it's that society makes a contract with the ruler, and that the government, the king, does not come first. People come first. So people are above the government, and the government should serve the people, which is what we have now. So his ideas are that the government is created by the people, and the people have natural rights just from being born. And this is going to later be an issue during the Civil War, using these same ideas, when it is that all men have equal rights. Is it all white men? Is it all black men? Is it all men, also women? So that's all going to come to conflict later on. Anyways, he believes that the government's job is to protect the natural rights that you have from just being born. Those rights are life, liberty, and property. So if the government, that's your social contract with the government, if the government fails to do so, you have the right to revolt. And of course, that is going to be what eventually happens with the American Revolution. So the colonists see the Glorious Revolution as this model for a constitutional government, and revolts broke out in several different colonies, trying to restore this self-rule and reinforce this idea that they were entitled to the rights of the Englishmen. So they're saying we are entitled to the constitutional rights that are over in England, which are trial by jury, protection from unfair searches, and taxation. So at the same time, Britain and France are locked in this global rivalry, drawing the colonies into what's called King William's War and Queen Anne's War. So both of these wars end in stalemates, but they mark this beginning of the colonial involvement in these imperial conflicts. So this is really going to shape the identity of the colonies and the deeper tensions that these local people have in the colonies with this imperial control over them. And this is all going to lead to the American Revolution. Okay, so in Massachusetts, 1692, the same time, they're without an actual charter. So at this time, they're going to face these ideas of magic. These are Puritans, of magic and supernatural powers. That women are very weak and that the devil inherits the women. And they're going to go through a period of witchcraft accusations, and you're going to go further with the Salem witchcraft trials. But you have the King William's War had just begun. You had governments lacking, and then you start to have these widespread accusations of witchcraft. And that's going to lead to the Salem witchcraft trials, which you'll be learning more about in class, and how they go about and basically jail over 156 people with no real evidence, using spectral evidence. So this just creates, between the Salem village and the Salem town where the wealthier people lived, it's just going to be a panic that's going to spread, and people are going to die, mostly all women. I think there might be one male witch, but all the witches, of course, are women. And it's going to create this change in thought. So the New Englanders, who took pride in their ability to understand the world through reason and believed that ordinary people could shape their own destinies, the Salem witchcraft trials are going to be this turning point from fear and superstition to more of an individual and scientific view, is what's going to come out of the trials. So the Native Americans, who still at this time outnumber the Europeans in North America, are going to deal with the British becoming this dominant power along the eastern coast, while the France and Spain are going to maintain their outpost in the interior and in the south. France is going to focus on the fur trade and agriculture in areas like Quebec, Louisiana, and Mississippi, but they're going to struggle to attract settlers. The French colonies in the Caribbean, especially the ones that are producing sugar and coffee, are going to be very successful. Spain's presence in Florida is going to be centered, at St. Augustine, which is their military outpost. And you're going to have the creation of the first free black community in North America. It's called Garcia Real de Santa Teresa de Mos. I know y'all are laughing at that Spanish. I know you kids. Okay, so this is really just kind of a breakup of where the French, where the Spanish, and where New Mexico are and what they're doing. In the Southwest, you have Spanish missionaries trying to convert the Pueblo Indians in New Mexico. You have the Pueblo, I think I'm still saying that wrong, revolt in 1680. This is led by Pope. He is considered a medicine man, which is like a very high status in the Indian community. So the revolt was successful for the Native Americans, one of the most successful uprisings in the North American history, because it's going to have a death total of 400 Spaniards. And the retreating Spaniards who survived are going to go to El Paso. But the Indian tribe is going to die off. after the reconquest in 13 years, when Spain returns and has a very more aggressive policy towards the Indians. So you're going to have, for the Indians, you're going to have a transformation. You're going to have the lasting impact of this revolt is the spread of horses, which the Indians didn't have before, but the Spanish are going to leave them behind. And it's really going to transform these tribe groups that live in the plains area. So by the mid-1700s, the Native Americans have horses and guns. They've acquired a lot through trade. The tribes in that plains area, they're more mobile, they're more effective hunters. Their overall living conditions have increased and are better, but they're also having more intertribal warfares. So they're kind of reshaping their gender roles and how their culture was as they're bringing in this assimilation of American culture. So these changes also are going to reflect just the lasting effects that the European imperialism really has on the Native Indians' resistance across the continent.